It is awesome to see such a great crowd here for this event tonight. My name is Liz. I'm just going to do a couple of quick introductions. If anyone needs a restroom, you just go up those stairs and into the shop. The shop will also remain open after the event, so we encourage you guys to go in and browse and buy some books. And then, of course, the featured books are out here. So, all right. I'm going to introduce Mary Jo, and then she's going to introduce the panel. Mary Jo Salter is the author of 9. I saw those in my head. Thank you. Okay. Author of 9 collections of poems, most recently Zoom Rooms, which we have over on the table, and The Surveyors. She has been editor of Amy Clampitt's Collected Poems and Selected Poems, and co-editor of 3 editions of the Norton Anthology of Poetry. She also wrote the lyrics for composer Fred Hirsch in the song cycle Rooms of Light, The Life of Photographs. Her second children's book, Lena Learns to Talk, will be published in 2024.
No, it's 2026.
2026. These things are fluid. She is a professor emerita in the writing seminars at Johns Hopkins University and lives in Baltimore. She's also incredibly generous and kind, as many of you here probably know. And I'm looking out here, I feel like I know half of you. It's like the Baltimore poetry community came out, and I think that's testament to what a great and generous person Mary Jo is. So, and really nice to have this great group of fine people. So I'll pass things over.
Thank you so much, and thanks to all of you for being here. I do feel like it's a party. We all, so many of us know each other. So nice to see you. I am joined in this celebration of this new book by some wonderful people, and in order they are Stephen Reichert and Clare Banks, who are editors of Baltimore's own Smartish Pace, and of course you also know them through the Hot L poetry series. Armen Davoudian, author of his first book is The Palace of 40 Pillars, and he is here from California. And Garbriella Fee, who also has completed a first manuscript of poems and is also published with Dora Malech at the end of the road. They co-translated a wonderful book of poems from Italian, and then Dora Malech, in addition to that, is of course the author of many books of poems and editor of Hopkins Review. So here's what we thought we would do. I'll tell you just a little bit about how these books work. David Lehman founded the Best American Poetry series in 1988. And he's had 36 different guest editors, a different one every year. And in each of those years, that editor chooses 75 poems by 75 different people. And one of the principles behind it too is to try to represent as many journals as possible, because even though we all lament, the death of the humanities, the death of literature, the death of poetry, and et cetera, in fact, while we are worried about that, it is also true that there are many wonderful journals out there. And so one of my goals was not only to represent the New Yorker or the New York Review of Books, but many other journals, some of which I had never heard of when I first started working on this project. And it took a year, because it was a year, but of course, with the delay with publication, what I was really doing was reading from October of 2022 to October of 2023, and so those make the Best American Poems of 24. The other thing I should mention is that when David Lehman started this series, of course there was no internet, and so one of the ways in which we poets have all benefited is that a book comes out and perhaps you haven't seen a poem that originally appeared in a journal, but then some website will pick it up. And so in many cases we were getting poems from Poetry Daily, Poem a Day, Lit Hub, places like that. without being too much like a teacher, given that I retired 2 years ago, I thought I would just read. David Lehman wrote a very interesting introduction. I wrote one that I hope is interesting and is mostly sort of light, but I came up with a couple of thoughts about what I was looking for in poetry, because there's no such thing as best, obviously. What is best to me is not best to you, and although we'll have an overlap. And so here's what I was thinking. The business of poets, I would argue, includes at least some of these aspirations: to witness the world, including the layered, shifting moods of their own minds' interiors, to feel deeply and also to think through their feelings, to experience life with all of the senses, which sometimes get profitably jumbled, to express some aspect of the human comedy and the human tragedy by exploiting the unique resources of a particular language or languages, to suggest with figures like simile or metaphor the surprising congruity of seemingly unlike things, to speak to their contemporaries about contemporary matters, to place themselves also within the history of humankind, including the history of literature, and to add something to it, to channel our universal musical instincts, our childlike but never merely childish love of song, to dare to remain uncertain and paradoxical and inconclusive as life itself, while also making a finished thing, a poem of beauty. So again, we'll all have different opinions about what beauty is, but I thought what would be really fun was to ask my fellow readers to choose the poems that they wanted to read. And we're lucky enough to have two of the contributors, Armen Davoudian and Garbriella Fee. They'll go first, and they'll each read their own poem and one other that they chose from the anthology, and then we'll go on from there. So I'll just ask you two to go first.
Thank you, Mary Jo. Is this okay? Can you hear me?
Yes.
Okay. I'm going to read a poem called Conscription. All the families alike in their unhappiness. The mother waking early to draw the curtains, to set out the butter. Soon the father sitting glumly at the head of the table. Soon the son come down, dressed in fatigues, his shaved face mirrored on the table. Soon the son dying, all the sons dying. Only here is he still there. It is still dark. The butter is still cold. The mother's hand paused on the blinds, which fall slightly apart. A narrow strip of white on the dark floor. The light's arm on the carpet, like a man reaching to touch his lover's beard. I'm going to read a poem by another contributor, Richie Hoffman. This is Lamb. I had a lamb I brought everywhere, who only had one eye. At the train stations, all the grown-ups would say, "Be mindful of your things, little boy. Someone will steal right out of your pocket or take the watch off your wrist." My dad had a beautiful overcoat. The lamb's white fur got smudged. My brother was a baby, and in restaurants, the old waiters would pick him up and kiss him again and again on the cheek with their mustaches and tell my parents that they promised they would bring him back in a minute, but now they needed to show the chef. I don't remember when the eye became unglued, and who knows where it went. On long train rides, I remember falling asleep, putting my finger in the hole where it used to be. Once he had to go in an overhead bin, and he was freezing when I kissed him again. Thank you.
Hi everyone. Can everyone hear me? Yes. This poem is called A Lighthouse Keeper Considers Love, and it's part of a series of poems I wrote in which a lighthouse keeper, sort of fictional persona, considers a number of things, mainly abstractions, and reflects on them. She came neither by schooner nor skiff, neither by sea nor brackish channel, neither by south nor east nor west. And if she came by north, I saw nothing of her arrival, standing as I do with the ice sheet at my back. She said neither please nor thank you, had neither suitcase nor hat. When I gave her the choice of spare bedrooms, she took neither yellow nor red. She was neither tired nor wakeful, spoke neither kind words nor cruel. When I set her a place at my table, she took neither chair nor stool. She was neither pale nor dark-haired, neither fat nor thin. Evenings I ran her a bath. She neither got out nor stayed in. She could neither dive to an oyster bed, nor sail to town for new oil, nor pull hard on a fishing line, nor tell humpback from right whale. She was neither a wit nor a reader. She could neither weed nor sow. When she sat in the garden, while I pulled one potato after another from a rocky furrow, she sang, neither fast nor slow. And I'm going to read a poem from another contributor, Joshua Bennett. This poem is called First Philosophy. What is your all-time favorite phenomenon? Mine is when the error is as lovely as the aim. The other day, my wife texts me, "Love thy baby," like a contemporary commandment. Later, she explains that she meant to write, "Love that baby," in response to a mint condition song I sent that morning, but I can't let the first phrase go. It reminds me of those older saints on Sunday saying, "Look at God," whenever they were interrupted by transcendent beauty. I tried and did not see him, nor dared to ask where I might search. But I cherished the lesson, took personally that charge to study the invisible, call forward its power through chant or speech, a distinct vocal pattern or arrangement of keys, and the spirit would cast its fathomless cloak over us, make us glow. At home, we worshipped precision, children honed by hot combs and ironing boards, perfect grades, our family name a banner we carried in our war against the outside world. How did I get here? This soft blue house in Massachusetts, my hand against the Japanese maple outside to better hear its wisdom. Son singing ballads in his toddler Esperanto downstairs as I try to compose the story of our arrival, getting the details wrong, no doubt, though that melody is unmistakable, clear, from all those dreams dueling in the air.
Maybe since you're right next to Dora, I will ask Dora to go next, and you can explain what you're reading from Dora.
Thank you. I just want to say, first of all, congratulations to Garbriella and Armen. These are such beautiful poems and in beautiful company here. The poems I'm going to read, Mary Jo mentioned that I edit the Hopkins Review. There are a number of contributors, editors, former editors here in the room, so I hardly need to explain where these poems are coming from, but it was really wonderful to get to publish poems by Richard Kenny and Heather McHugh. Those are the two poems that I'll be reading today. And yes, it is a little terrifying to read two MacArthur Genius winners in a row, so I have to take a deep breath. Whew. This is by Richard Kenny, Self's the Man. How is it we can know that there's a word when we can't, for the life of us, think of it? My word. Worse, who's the Oz-like dream master who casts my dream to its catastrophe? Who is that shaper of the unforeseen? Here in my hemispheres, are we a foursome? Dog faithful, some insomniac man Friday shook me gently at 5 sharp last Friday. Why? I had to catch an early flight. Who's he? Say, is that faithful acolyte who recognizes 4 is 2 plus 2, who rings the bell to signal something's true, the same as that valet who ties my shoes? It's my unconscious mind. Excuse me, whose? Who carries words up from the basement, rung by rung, depositing them on my tongue in the nick of time as though I thought of them? That's what I think, of course. I thought of them. I'm flipping to Heather McHugh. Heather McHugh read this poem for us at the Association of Writers and Writing Programs Conference in Seattle. And if you've ever heard Heather McHugh read, she's truly singular, so I won't try to reproduce that. But if you ever get the chance, take it. 2 widows making a bed. Look at this. What a wonder to find it by accident, under the covers and out of its box. It's equipped for some duty to judge by its crankshaft the structures of beauty. I bet that it walks. Turn it on. Can you find any switch for ignition? They haven't designed many I'd like to keep. It should rise. It should shine. It should take a position, not kill our ambition or put us to sleep. Does it sit? Can it stand? It has spin. It has spyware. Its handles are mangled, so why does it lie there? With stir stick and fur trick, a can that's a zinger. Could it just be a man? Look, it won't lift a finger. It's ruthlessly useless. That paltry display will not come to its senses and won't go away. It's enragingly loath to engage on demand. If it's this hard to start, then we never could pause it. Just give me a hand. It can go in the closet.
And Claire, would you like to go next, and then Stephen?
So I'm going to read, can everybody hear me? Okay. I'm going to read first a poem by Ada Limon called In Praise of Mystery, a poem for Europa. Arching under the night sky, inky with black expansiveness, we point to the planets we know. We pen quick wishes on stars. From Earth, we read the sky as if it is an unerring book of the universe, expert and evident. Still, there are mysteries below our sky. The whale song, the songbird singing its call, and the bow of a wind-shaken tree. We are creatures of constant awe, curious at beauty, at leaf and blossom, at grief and pleasure, sun and shadow. It is not darkness that unites us, not the cold distance of space, but the offering of water, each drop of rain, each rivulet, each pulse, each vein. O second moon, we too are made of water, of vast and beckoning seas. We too are made of wonders, of great and ordinary loves, of small invisible worlds, of a need to call out through the dark. And I picked Harriet Mullen because I love her, but also we have some poems of hers in our next book, so I thought I'd read them. So she loves to do haikus and tankas, and this is a group of haiku called Haiku Garden. Find frogs and toads in every yard. No garden is complete without them. Zip tight in their sleeping bags. Who could imagine their deep black-eyed dreams? Piquant peppers, please taunt, tease the tongue-piercing taste, igniting desire. Of all edible ovaries, what could taste as luscious as sweet figs? Watermelon crossed Atlantic's perilous waves with black seed cargo. Injuries sustained while picking berries. Snagged skin, bruised fruit, hurt feelings.
My name is Stephen Reichert. I'm one of the editors of Smartish Pace, one of the poetry magazines, and in choosing my two poems, the first one is by Christopher Childers. That was an easy selection because it was in Smartish Pace. So thank you, Mary Jo, for that. Thank you for having us here, inviting us, and for the Ivy and everybody coming out. This is wonderful. But yeah, thank you for seeing the greatness in Chris's poem and selecting it. One thing I noticed when I was looking through this today is I was going to read from Smartish Pace, but he changed the poem. It went from a good poem to one of the best poems. I think we better get it. All right, this poem's by Christopher Childers, titled Miasma. The plague's a lot more boring than I thought. I hide, I wait. I wrote poetic prose. Who knows what someone has or hasn't got? I avoid strangers, do as I was taught. The Wi-Fi's buffering, the laptop froze. The plague's a lot more boring than I thought. It's in a cough, a tasteless patch, a clot, or nothing, or a swelling of the toes. Who knows what someone has or hasn't got? Airplanes are grounded, slots untouched. The hot dates, the booze, the savings, it all goes. The plague's a lot more boring than I thought. My lying foes expose the lies I've bought. Liars, I hope they all end up comatose. Who knows what someone has or hasn't got? Refrigerators sputter, bodies rot. We slump at screens, joints harden in the pose. The plague's a lot more boring than I thought. The things I used to live for, I do not. Abstraction breathes inside me, feelings slows. Who knows what someone has or hasn't got? The plague's a lot more boring than I thought. And for the last poem, I selected a poem by Rachel Haddis, a poet I've long admired, and somebody who was many years ago kind enough to submit to Smartish Pace. But more importantly, this poem illustrates another good example of representations of wonderful magazines. This originally appeared in Literary Matters, which is edited by Ryan Wilson, as probably many of you know. He's the best editor and puts out an amazing publication, so it's great to see Rachel's wonderful poem and his editing represented here. And Rachel Haddis's poem is titled Voyage. The ship was crammed to bursting. Luggage, life jackets, jammed benches, passengers sitting on one another's laps. Was this a ferry plying between islands? We have passed ages' icy caves, and manhood's dark and tossing waves. And once these were behind us, we hugged a coast and glided past promontories, cliffside villages, steep hills slanting down to little harbors. On each pier, a festive group was gathered. Bridal whites, bright bouquets, black suits, and glossy patent leather shoes. Vivid even from a distance, gleaming in the salty air. A wedding or a festival, a mourning or a funeral. The gathering celebrants in every harbor waved as we sailed past, and we waved back, steadily plowing onward. Where and when, not the right questions. Time was an element, not a place. And in and through it, on we went. The landmarks of each life bobbing in our wake.
So this was really interesting for me to find out what my fellow readers were drawn to, and in some cases we were drawn to the same poems. Stephen mentioned one by Stephen Kampa, so I thought I would read that one. He lives in Florida and teaches at Flagler College, and I think is now in his fourth book. But someone I always admire. This is called Someone Else's Gift. Always to long for someone else's gift, to blow that blistering alto sax, to lift into the flashbulbed air for a reverse slam dunk while stunned guards gawk, to have a punster's cheek or porn star's cock, to capture share by share gold-plated Wall Street fame, to meditate beyond nirvanic depths or radiate beatitudes of prayer like any frescoed saint, even to make a perfect triple-decker dark fudge cake or master the eclair, means answering a roguish shout we follow down some smashed bottle alley to a hollow recess, a doorway where, if luck has tailed us on that lonely walk, when we knock, because we have to knock, no one will be there. You probably didn't notice as I was reading, because there's so much interesting music going on, that was all one sentence. And I thought I would also read someone. One of the pleasures of working on this book was that the majority of people in it I've never met. And so it just was fun to discover their poems. And there is a poet named Maggie Smith, who is not the British actors, and who wrote a poem called Hope Chest. And I'll just say one thing about it. One of the characteristics I was also drawn to in certain poems is shorter lyric poems often do have a way of using one image and expanding upon it, making a conceit out of it. And she does this with the Hope Chest, which people don't do today. Some people in the audience may not even know what that is, but it was your chest of linens that you put together before you got married. So this is a sort of divorce Hope Chest. As a bride given away, then again as a wife, twice taken off a man's hands. As a bride presented as a gift, as a wife discarded, not returned, not given back, but disowned, buck past. Not doe a deer, but the kind you pocket and spend, or waste. My dowry was the dear I am, the whole of me folded inside in lieu of linen and lace and the good silver. So now I take it back. Dearly, I take myself back. I also wanted to read that one because we saw deer out here as we were walking in. We could come back and read a few more, but we wanted to use this. I wanted to use this opportunity to talk with both the editors and the contributors at the table about the process of submitting your work, waiting to see whether someone is going to pick it up, and then perhaps it gets anthologized, perhaps it doesn't. Stephen, you were telling me a kind of amusing story about the Christopher Childers poem. Do you want to say something about that?
About how it's the only good pandemic poem written? No, of course, like as you can imagine, we were flooded with, and we still are, with pandemic poems, right? So I don't think it reaches a saturation point, and it's competitive, and even things like, we're human, even things that are like well written because of the subject matter are just gonna fall short of getting selected. So they're just up against a lot of stiff competition. Was that the funny part? I forget what was funny.
Well, it was funny to me that the poem that you were most sure you weren't going to like is the one that we.
Oh, that's right.
You know,
That's
but
it.
whatever.
That is funny.
And let me turn to Dora too. Let me pass the mic down. Any reflections you have about either choosing these particular poems or the process in general?
Thank you. And congratulations. I realize I congratulated Armen and Garbriella, but not Mary Jo and everyone from Smartish Pace. This is wonderful to be here with all of you. I will sort of steal Gabriella's joke. In fact, I'll steal it in its entirety. Because I feel these are not my poems, and yet they are my poems. Like, I feel so proud of them. I'm seeing, Josiah, others who, who worked at the Hopkins Review and then moved on from the Hopkins Review, and the company that they keep in here, it meant enough to me that I sort of brought them here tonight, and I carried them in like this, and Garbriella said, "Are they still nursing?" And the answer is yes, kind of. So, here are these really sort of esteemed poets, and yet to me, they're sort of, it's still like carrying babies around, because you have all of this context of the journal coming together. So I will say, I love Smartish Pace as a contributor, as a reader. I know Armen has worked with Literary Matters, or maybe still works with Literary Matters. And so, there's lots of sort of editorial experience here. And I'll just say, from both sides of it, I feel like anthologies really breathe like a second life into the moment of the journal. Like, it matters to me that this is summer, fall, etc. of a particular year, but then Best American Poetry and other anthologies really do feel like they sort of call back and bring that moment back, which I think is so beautiful.
Can I say, yeah. So my poem, Lighthouse Keeper Considers Love, was published in Guest House, which is edited by Jane Huffman. And I submitted a whole series of these Lighthouse Keeper Considers poems to Guest House. And when they were accepted, Jane sent me an email that said we would love to accept Lighthouse Keeper Considers Love. And then I immediately got another email that stacked onto that email that said she also wanted Lighthouse Keeper Considers Solitude. But the process of submitting and having poems accepted can feel so anxiety-producing and so impersonal that I got it in my head that I had just received the same email twice, and I didn't want to have the really embarrassing experience of thinking 2 poems had been accepted and only 1 had been accepted. So I wrote her back this email, and I was like, "Dear Jane, are you saying you would like both love and solitude?" And she writes back, she's like, "Yes, I would like both love and solitude." And I was like, don't we all just want those 2 things? But it was just a moment of a fun moment of kind of, sort of, it kind of personalized what can feel like such an impersonal process. And it really is just sort of 2 human beings on the other side of, on the other side of that.
So I live in California, and I got to Baltimore yesterday on my way to the East Coast. I used to live here, and Kate, who lives where I used to live, said that there was a letter addressed to me in my own handwriting, in my old apartment. And when we opened it, it was a response from a submission that I had sent 6 years ago. And it said, "This is not a rejection, but we assume you've moved on." So, just sharing that.
This is the poetry life, and I was so glad that Armen told that story, because I was going to do this and tell the funny story, but really it really is exactly what it's like to be a writer, correct? And even being told that you can now, is this on? Yes. Even being told that you can submit simultaneously, which long ago one was not allowed to do, doesn't really help. It just means many, many people have your poem for 6 years, So we all, those of us who send our work out, we know who the editors are, not only who are publishing things we want to read, but also the ones who are humane enough to answer, at least within 6 months, not 6 years, and so it's a long, long process. And so one of the pleasures for me of working on this book was that there was going to be a relatively immediate gratification, right? I'm only working on it for a year. Everybody who had those poems published, they were only published a year ago. And there was also a chance to say a little bit about the moment. And Stephen was talking about how annoying the pandemic it became because we all wanted to talk about it. Well, I include some of my ranting that I am always doing in my introduction about artificial intelligence and how it's going to ruin the world, and particularly the world of writing. And I was corresponding with the editor at Scribner's, who was excerpting this for the intro for the magazine. She said, well, whatever we do, we have to cut out the stuff about AI because everyone has AI fatigue. And so we'll see, I mean, one of the things that's fun about an anthology like this is if you collect them as I do, you can go back to 1992 and see what was everybody obsessed about, what were the themes that they kept writing about that weren't quite as obvious as everyone's living through a pandemic, but something else that you wouldn't see until you had a little bit of distance. And I thought, oh, everybody's worried about that, Other thoughts?
I was just gonna sort of piggyback on that. Like we just judged a couple of prizes at Smartish Pace, and I was gonna ask you about that too. That we definitely see things over and over again, and I feel like this year there were a lot of ghosts. Just so many ghosts and bees, ghosts and bees. So anyway, I was gonna ask you too to think about like what were some of the things that kept coming up for you this year.
Ukraine was one, and I imagine the editor is working on the book now, is probably getting poems about the war in Gaza. But I felt I didn't have any sort of political agenda. It's not like I said to myself, I have to have some more poems, but that was very much, it's just the way the world is. There's always a war on. So there was that. But really I was pleased that there was a range. And what I was more trying to be aware of was what are my theme prejudices, not so much my tonal or formal ones, but I discovered after a while that I had accepted quite a number of very long poems. I also accepted one or chose one poem that's 11 syllables long, so there is a range. But there was a crown of sonnets that I recommend to you by A.E. Stallings. We don't have time to read it all tonight, but the principle is of crown shyness, which I didn't know about, is that trees tend to grow almost to meet, and then they don't meet each other. And so she wrote a crown of sonnets in which those repeated words are not actually touching. There's white space between them. It's very cool. And that's one of my preoccupations, but I don't think people are writing more long poems right now. Probably it's just that I was drawn to them. Well, can we open this up to you? Do you have questions or anyone? Oh, I couldn't see. Who has a question? Oh.
Somebody have? Somebody has.
Yes.
Oh, my question originally was, in most cases, what stands out more, solid structure of a poem or more so a very unique take on what's already been done, or something entirely new?
That's a really good question. I mean, I think people who are writing with a very solid structure and a very with formal expectations, the bar is very high to say something new, because we've all read many sonnets, we've all read many villanelles, but ultimately what you want, no matter what the format is, what I think all readers want is somebody who can both express something close to what I have observed or felt, but also do it in a way that I haven't thought of. And there's some combination of that commonality of human experience and, oh, I didn't think of that is important. And the other thing, and I think this would be, the editors here would agree with me, that, it's a first read when you have that feeling, and it's good if you can come back and you're still surprised. This is my criterion also for humor. Like, if it's funny once and you never laugh again when you go back, it's probably not that funny. But if it's funny next week, it's funny. So those are some of the things I was thinking about. Maybe I should read one poem that I think is both funny and sad. It's the very first poem in the book, and it's by Kim Adenizio, who writes in a real variety of forms, including free verse, and but always has, I think, this wonderful, both humorous and dead serious combination. And it's called Existential Elegy. By the way, this is just alphabetical. That's the best way to organize a book. That's how Alicia Stallings organizes all of her poems. She just puts them in alphabetical order. I may try that sometime. But anyway, that's how we do it, is by the alphabet, by their name. So Adenizio comes first. Existential Elegy. Maybe everyone is walking around thinking something abstract and ontological, like the existence of others as a freedom defines my situation and is even the condition of my own freedom. Maybe de Beauvoir opens her notebook and writes it as soon as she sits down at the Duc Magot. Life is inherently meaningless, probably thinks Sartre, across from her at the table, studying the waiter. The chef savagely prepares a tart for its destruction. Yet the street lamps blink on without thinking, light then nothing, as the booksellers along the Seine close their metal boxes. Humming, a woman pulls her damp dress from a basket, then clothespins her simulacrum to the line. So maybe not everyone. Maybe I can just lie here on the couch and pet the cat the rest of the afternoon. He seems troubled ever since the other one died. He won't chase that snaky rainbow thing when I drag it over the carpet. What is he thinking? Snaky rainbow things are but fleeting pleasures distracting us from the terror of the void that awaits us? My first and only time in Paris was 30 years ago. It was February and snowing. I wandered Montparnasse Cemetery while heady thoughts flurried from the clouds, wet my face and disappeared. Everyone I loved was still alive. Paris is still there. The bouquiniste, too. Rare editions and magazines, postcards, souvenirs. The de Magot is still there, but now supposedly everyone interesting goes to the floor. Look at them, alive in this poem, holding their menus and about to disappear. De Beauvoir weeps as Sartre's lowered in. I should mention one other thing about the book, which you've probably seen in other editions if you've looked at these, which is that the authors are invited not only to give their bio, but if they choose, and they don't always choose, to write something about what triggered the poem, what initiated it. And she writes, Adenizio writes about the fact that this was a prompt she gave her students: take a quotation from anywhere and try to write a poem about it. So she got this long existential sentence and went with it and threw in her cat. And says in her description of the process, I had to take out a lot about my cat. So, okay. Any other questions, anyone? Yes.
Something that was mentioned in the introductions is that two of you had recently translated